Finding Scruples here, aka Tina. You just gotta be polite about it. And I decided to hop on here this morning because there was something on my mind. I've been thinking about it for the last few days, and I want to thank Derek Gretanego for planting this particular seed, or rather, extracting this particular memory. Forgive my voice. I think I may be coming down with something. Like a flu or a cold or something like that. So I've been a little under the weather, but I wanted to go ahead and do this. And I'm doing this on my phone. So it's the first time that I'm recording on my phone. It's just a little more convenient for me to do that today, just given, the fact that I'm really not feeling that well. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and share something that Derek posted on his Twitter maybe a day or two ago. He posted a little poll, and it was something to the effect of, with all the race games going on, have you ever felt any of the following? And it was A, I believe, dating outside your race, B, allowing your children to date outside the race, or C, befriending outside the race. And I really like the poll, and immediately I thought to myself, my gut reaction, my gut response was no, I don't think about it. I don't give it a second thought, which is true. I have not thought about it for decades. It's just I'm engaged to a wonderful, wonderful man who is Greek and Danish. Prior to that, I was married for 15 years to a man who was also Danish. I love the Danes. And my first husband was African American. He was black, African American. He was black, but before that, I'd always dated outside my race. I had dated Asians, Latinos. I speak Spanish. I'm not going to pull a Cory Booker here, but I speak a little German, and so I tend to have a very eclectic taste in just everything: music, food, wine, people, and I don't look at race. I look at what's going on in here and, of course, what's happening upstairs. And so I was like, okay. What it did do, though, is it led me to something else, and it led me down memory lane and thinking, well, have I experienced any sort of racial tensions or issues within those relationships? Like, had I ever felt like in any way perhaps shunned or discriminated by any of these folks' families, the men that I was dating? And the answer was no. It had never happened. Not once. In fact, if I had felt any sort of discrimination based on my preference of lover or friend, it was coming from my people, my family, and friends, or people, who I considered friends at the time. So that's where the hate was coming from. And it's unfortunate. I did have an incident when I was in my very, very early 20s that I'll go ahead and share at the risk of sounding like a crazy person. But it did spark that particular memory, and I will go ahead and share that with you guys. I remember I was about 20. I was barely 20, maybe just turned 21. I had already had, in fact, I was 22. And I know this because I had my oldest daughter, who at the time was less than 2 years old. Her father and I did not make it a year in our marriage. We were only together for a few years. It was not a very good marriage at all. And I'll leave it at that. We happen to be really good friends today, and I'm very happy to say that. Like, it's amazing, how close we have come, and how far we've come. But at the time, not a very good situation. And so I was dating this guy, we'll call him K. And it was so funny because when I met him, met him at a bar, and this is when I was heavy into the life, and I wasn't particularly attracted to him. I had actually been attracted to his friend, and it just so turns out that Kay and I had way more in common. He was a surfer, and he rode a skateboard, and he listened to Metallica, and we both loved the same food and music, and we were also we grew up both in the foster care system. We were both adopted, and so we had quite a bit in common. We just connected. We connected on so many levels. It didn't matter to me that he was white. Apparently at the time I didn't know this, he looked just like Eminem when Eminem was just coming on the scene. Marshall Mathers, I wasn't listening to a lot of rap back then, so I had no clue who Marshall Mathers was. But every time we went out, people were like, oh my God, he looks like Eminem. And I'm like, oh, okay. that's, that's fine. But that was that, you know, the blonde hair and everything. And so we really connected. We dated for almost 2 years. We were together for almost 2 years. Within the first year, I had met his family. I had been invited over to Christmases. They welcomed me in like that. They, really really good people. His mother, his adopted mother, and his father. They were just so cool. I met his sister, cousins, uncles. They had given me gifts like over the Christmas holiday. They really wanted to make me feel like part of the family, and I was just overcome. You know, and I gotta say, I was very comfortable around them because I had grown up around white people all my life, around Asians, around different types of people, and I never really felt uncomfortable. We were all broke. We were all poor. That was the common denominator to the kids in my neighborhood. We grew up in the hood, and black, white, purple, it didn't matter. We didn't. None of us had money, and so race really wasn't an issue. It was more like, you know, whoever came out, you know, with the GI Joe with the kung fu grip first had it going on. You know, He Man was a really big thing back then, and so if you had He Man action figures and stuff, you were just living the life. But it you know, other than that, that was the thing. Anyway, getting back to Mr. K here. Um, so, you know, it was really cool. I had met his family. I met his grandmother who lived in the South Bay, and we used to go to his grandmother's house all the time on weekends. Her husband, his grandfather, had passed within that time, so it was, you know, she was living alone. She was living in her home alone, and she needed a lot of help with her backyard, which was massive. And so there were trees and, you know, shrubs and bushes and just sorts of things that needed tending. And so Kay and I would go out there and, you know, hang out with her and spend weekends and help her just take care of things around the house. She reminded me so much of my grandmother. They were literally the same age, came from the same, you know, Jim Crow era, except one was black, one was white. It was just, there was no difference though. She would sit in her little rocking chair and tell me all these stories about back in the day. And I guess Kay had heard, he had heard it so many times over the years, he would just sort of like go off on his own, and I'd just be like, all ears, because I was just fascinated at how much her story reminded me of my own grandmother's story. And again, you know, these two women, the only difference between the two of them was the color of their skin. And so we would hang out. Now, one weekend we found ourselves, you know, over there, and we had started the yard work but hadn't finished it. And so we were like, okay, we're going to, you know, wait until the next day. And, you know, so we just sort of hung out with grandma, and she was a little hard of hearing. So, not that that really matters to this point. But we hung out with her for a little bit, and then eventually she made her way to bed around 10 o'clock that night, that evening, one Saturday. And so Kay and I decided to stay up. Now, she had a nice little liquor cabinet, and at the time, another thing we had in common was our love of alcohol. We didn't realize it at the time, but we were overcome with that sort of disease. So we started hitting the liquor. We were drinking the rum and the whiskey and you know, we were just putting it in like, you know, nobody's business. And we were watching I believe we were watching a surfing film at the time. I can't remember the name of it. We watched so many. But we were watching, and we ended up getting into a disagreement, which turned into an argument, which turned into a straight up, like, in your face. We were in each other's faces. I cannot for the life of me remember. And that's how it is. We get into these little fights that we don't even remember. We remember the aftermath. We remember the pain, but I don't remember what the argument was over. I can tell you this, it was probably something really stupid. And so at some point we found ourselves like face to face. I'm 6'1", he's 6'1", so we were both just literally eye to eye. And I called him some names, and then he dropped the N word. He called me the N word with the ER straight up to my face. And I caught that when he did it, he backed up a little bit. And I said, okay. And before I knew it, I hit him, he hit the ground. And that was my reaction. I had just a little bit of a temper back then. So I was not going for that. The second I reacted, I knew I had overreacted. I felt so bad because he was literally laid out on the floor in the middle of his grandmother's living room, just out. And he tried to pull himself up. I actually reached out to try to help him up, And he, of course, wouldn't take my hand. He scurried up and kind of gave me this fearful look and just ran out of the house. Um, and I remember the emotion that followed was, I can't describe it, because I knew immediately that I had overreacted. I felt terrible, mainly because I knew this man didn't mean it. I knew him, I knew his family. And as we all know, ignorance and racism starts usually in the home. So when you meet someone's family, you can usually tell where they are coming from if they hold to those prejudices. And these people clearly were not those kind of people. And so he wasn't that kind of person. I'd never known him to utter a prejudice or racist word against anybody in the time that I spent with him. It just never happened. He said that to piss me off, and it worked. He triggered me, and I pulled the trigger. So, I felt really bad. I retired onto the guest room in which I was staying and went to sleep and tried not to really think too much of it. I don't know that I slept very well that night, but the next morning I remember getting up and just thinking, oh my goodness, the flood of emotions had just come back. And I thought about his grandmother first. And I thought, oh, I hope she didn't have to hear that. I was so ashamed of my behavior, of both of us. I was just ashamed that I had disrespected that woman's household. I grew up, you don't disrespect your elders. You just don't do that. Black, white, candy apple, red, no. I can't speak for the youth of today. I'll table that. But back, that's how I was raised. I wasn't perfect, but I was raised that way. And so I made my way into the living room because I wanted to check on Kay to see if he was okay. And he had already, started his coffee. And when, I walked up to him and he had his head down and he looked up and he had the biggest shiner. His right eye looked like there was a patch over it. And I just thought, oh my God, are you okay? It was horrible. It was horrible. I think that was the first time I'd ever really seen a black eye and given one. And I was just, the shame, just the weight was too much. And I went into, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? And he went into, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I said that. I was like, dude, I'm not even worried about that. I'm more concerned about the pain, the sting of the N-word lasted maybe 5 seconds. But he had to walk around with that black eye for 2 weeks. So, it just was horrible. And then too, I thought, how are we going to explain this to his grandmother when she wakes up? We're never going to be able to explain this. And I just felt like a first class heel. I did. And so I thought, okay, maybe we should escape. Like, I need to leave. I'm embarrassed. And he was like, no, it's okay. I'll just explain to her what happened. I was like, no, I don't want you to get in trouble. And you don't have to tell her, like, what you said. Like, we were trying to make up some kind of story. And so we heard her stirring at some point and we just thought, oh God, what are we doing? We both just kind of sat there stoned, like two little kids who just knew they were about to get a lashing. And so she's stirring. She makes her way into the kitchen. She doesn't look into the living room and see us right away. She goes into the kitchen and we hear her fumbling around with things and we're just like, oh my God, my heart's beating. And all of a sudden I see her coming to the door frame and in her hand, she looks like she has a pair of glasses, those big like 1960s sunglasses that the ladies used to wear that were just in fashion back then, but wouldn't really pass in the 90s. And in her other hand, she had an ice pack. And she walked up to her grandson and she said, here, you need to put this on your eye and take these. And then she turned to me and she goes, are you okay, young lady? And I said, yes, ma'am. Put my head down and I was like, mm-hmm. She goes, okay, now, well, the sun is coming up and you guys know it's going to get hot. So you need to get out there and get to that yard work before it gets too hot. We couldn't believe it. We were just like, we knew because she had given him the ice pack and the sunglasses that she obviously heard everything. And we were just dumbfounded and feeling very, very lucky. She said nothing else. She was like, did you eat? She asked me, not yet. And she went into the kitchen to make us breakfast and she was in there. So I don't hear anybody going out in the yard. We were just, we didn't take it. You didn't have to tell us. We ran out there. We started in the yard work and we were literally just like, oh my God, she heard us. And we were laughing because it was okay. Everything was just, it was fine. It was going to be okay. And I just thought, oh my goodness, this woman, something my grandmother would do. And I just felt so humbled and I was so grateful. And, when we left after the artwork was done, and she was seeing us out the door, she was like, all right, you two take care of each other now. And we were like, we will. And she was like, and son, you just go ahead and keep some ice on that eye. Just, the whole scenario was quite the lesson. And we stayed together for like another 5 months after that. It just, we moved on from it. I felt so bad. People were asking him what happened to his eye. And I went into, he was trying to protect me. Like, I just did not want to embarrass him any further. I felt terrible. I was doing everything I can, like home remedies, anything we could try to help it heal a little faster. So eventually we did break up. I ran into him a few years after that. And I believe I was already with my second husband, who I was married to for about 15 years. We were about maybe 2 or 3 years into our relationship. So I ran into Kay, and it was so sweet because he comes up to me, and the first thing out of his mouth is, I am so sorry. Like, he was still holding on to that, and I was just like, you gotta let that go. Like, I understand, because I had to let go of the aftermath of that, but you have to let that go. I'm fine, and it's like, how are you? And what he did tell me, and I don't know, I hesitate to share this part, but he did say to me, he was like, I have been looking for another black girlfriend since. I guess he had dated a few other black women. He was bound and determined to get him a sister. And I was like, okay, well, I guess, just make sure that they're not like abusive. I don't know if he had a little masochism going on. But it was cool. We had caught up a little bit, and I think back on that now, and I think to myself, now that could have gone quite a few different ways. I could have just gone, you racist, and ran out of the house, and like cussed him out, and just didn't care, and didn't really, I could have not considered what I knew about this man. And I have been called a lot worse by brothers look just like me. Okay, so that was the first time I'd ever been called the N-word. And so by a white person, and it was just like not, not what you would expect. But I've been called other things many, many times by black people. And so I just thought, I'm not going to hold that against him. I like to take people as they are, as I know them, and I like to look into their hearts. It is all about empathy. Now, I'm not naive. I know that there is racism out there, and I know I've been discriminated against at times. Very, very few instances where it was just outright discrimination. And I walk away from those people. I don't give them another breath. I just don't waste my time, because if you allow that sort of ignorance to fill you up, then you become the thing that you're supposed to be fighting against, or that you are disgusted by. And so I really just wanted to share that with you guys, and also to thank Derek G for posing that question in that poll. And I really do think that, especially in this crazy time, we are living in just absolute twilight zone. I have no idea. I can't even call this the Matrix at this point. I have no clue what's happening in the world today. I just know that I'm really getting sick of it. And I will also just try to lead with every day with compassion, with empathy, and to see people for who they are. I'm not looking at you because you're a conservative. I'm not trying to look at you because you're a Democrat. I'm not trying to look at you because you're just black, or I'm looking through you to see who you are as a person. And so I just wanted to go ahead and share that with you. And if you guys have any sort of similar stories, I would love to hear them, because I gotta say, that was the most awkward moment of my life, but it was also, it was very poignant. And I really just forgot about it until Derek posted. So I just want to go ahead and just say, yeah, if you have the story that's similar and you want to share it with me, please go ahead and share that. And if you guys don't know who Derek Gardenego is, he's part of the crew of 3 that I like to listen to, and that's ABL, Anthony Brian Logan, and of course the Officer Tatum, along with the Conservative Twins. So I'm going to go ahead and pop a link to his YouTube page in the description section for those of you who may not be familiar with Derek. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and hop off here, and I'm sorry for the resolution. Again, I'm on my cell phone. It's a Pixel. I don't know. it's not an iPhone, so it's not going to be like, movie star quality here. But thank you for listening. And of course, as always, share the love, like if you like. And I will see you next time. Peace.